Vision of the Temple, a foreshadowing of the emerging Catholic Church. The Gospel of Judas presents a unique perspective on the disciples' vision of the Jerusalem temple, offering a provocative interpretation that challenges traditional Christian teachings and foreshadows the development of the Catholic Church. The vision, as described in the Gospel of Judas, involves the 12 witnessing a grand temple with priests performing rituals and leading people in worship. Jesus interprets this vision allegorically, revealing it to be a prophetic critique of emerging ecclesiastical structures and practices. The vision of the temple. In the vision, the disciples describe a great house with a large altar and 12 priests performing rituals. These priests sacrifice not only animals, but also their own children and spouses, committing acts of lawlessness, sexual immorality, and other grievous sins. The disciples note that the priests invoke Jesus' name during their rituals, despite their corrupt actions. Troubled by this, they seek Jesus' explanation. The disciples report, some sacrifice their own children, others their wives, in praise and humility with each other. Some sleep with men, some are involved in slaughter, some commit a multitude of sins and deeds of lawlessness. And the men who stand before the altar invoke your name, 39, and in all the deeds of their deficiency, the sacrifices are brought to completion. Troubled, they ask for clarification, reflecting the confusion and concern the vision instills in them. Jesus provides an allegorical interpretation, explaining that the vision symbolizes the religious system that will emerge in the future. He identifies the priests in the vision as the disciples themselves and the sacrificial rituals as the people they lead astray. This future system, Jesus warns, will misuse his name to justify acts of spiritual and moral corruption. Allegory and critique of church leadership. The Gospel of Judas offers a stark critique of the institutionalization of Christianity, particularly the emerging Catholic Church. The 12 priests symbolize the 12 apostles, whose legacy would be appropriated by future church leaders. Jesus' condemnation of the priests reflects the author's disapproval of the bishops and clergy who claimed apostolic authority but engaged in practices the author deemed corrupt. In his interpretation, Jesus declares, "Those you have seen receiving the offerings at the altar, that is who you are. That is the God you serve." And further explains, "The cattle you have seen brought for sacrifice are the many people you lead astray before that altar." This prophecy reveals that those leading the flock in the future will be entrenched in spiritual error. The man of sin, described in Thessalonians 2:3-4, is not an individual person, but a system of authority that emerged from the bishops of Rome, identified as the papacy. This system, the text suggests, will pervert the name of Christ for its own gain, even as it perpetuates sin and lawlessness. Jesus continues, "After him another man will stand there from the fornicators, and another will stand there from the slayers of children, and another from those who sleep with men, and those who abstain, and the rest of the people of pollution and lawlessness and error." These figures are described as the future leaders who will invoke Christ's name but act in ways contrary to his teachings. This reference aligns with the notion that the papacy, as an institution, represents a false system, one that misrepresents Christ's true message and uses his name to justify the very actions that Jesus condemns in the vision. The Gospel of Judas critiques the papacy's centralization of power and its alignment with moral and spiritual corruption, positioning it as a distorted form of Christianity that leads people astray, much as the priests in the vision lead people to make misguided sacrifices. Theological themes and anti-martyrdom. The Gospel of Judas challenges not only the authority of church leaders, but also the concept of martyrdom. In contrast to mainstream Christian teachings that exalt martyrdom as a path to divine favor, this text suggests that God does not desire human sacrifice or suffering. By extension, it questions the theological justification for Jesus' own death, presenting it not as a divine mandate, but as a tragic result of human error and betrayal. This anti-martyrdom stance aligns with the author's broader rejection of institutionalized religion. The gospel portrays the act of offering sacrifices, whether literal or metaphorical, as misguided and rooted in ignorance. Jesus warns his disciples, saying, "Stop sacrificing over the altar, since they are over your stars and your angels, and have already come to their conclusion there." This phrase emphasizes that true spiritual connection comes not through ritual sacrifice, but through a direct, personal relationship with God. Historical context: schisms and the Gospel's origins. The Gospel of Judas is believed to have originated during a period of intense theological and ecclesiastical conflict. Carbon dated to approximately AD 280, the text likely emerged in the context of schisms such as Novatianism and Donatism. Both movements resisted the authority of the Roman bishop and criticized the moral laxity of mainstream church leaders. The gospel reflects the concerns of these groups, particularly their rejection of hierarchical church structures and their emphasis on personal spiritual integrity. Its critique of the priesthood and sacrificial rituals echoes the Donatists' disdain for leaders they deemed unworthy and the Novatianists' call for a purer church. A radical reinterpretation of sacrifice. Jesus' statement, "Stop sacrificing over the altar," underscores the gospel's rejection of traditional sacrificial practices. The text envisions a spiritual renewal in which sacrifices are replaced by a direct connection to God, unmediated by corrupt institutions. Each individual is depicted as having their own star, a symbol of personal destiny and divine purpose. The Gospel's allegorical imagery draws on Jewish apocalyptic traditions, such as Ezekiel's visions and references to stars and angels, to emphasize the cosmic dimensions of its critique. By linking the disciples' vision to future generations, the text positions itself as a prophetic warning against the dangers of religious institutionalization. Conclusion: the Gospel of Judas presents a bold and controversial vision of the temple and the priesthood, interpreting it as a critique of the emerging Catholic Church. Through its allegorical interpretation of the disciples' vision, it challenges the authority of church leaders, the concept of martyrdom, and the practice of sacrifice. Rooted in the historical context of early Christian schisms, the gospel offers a radical call for spiritual renewal and a return to authentic divine connection. Far from being a marginal text, it provides valuable insight into the diverse theological debates that shaped early Christianity. It challenges the institutionalization of religion by confronting the false system that was emerging through the papacy, labeling it as the man of sin that would mislead future generations.